All right. Hello, everyone. Great to have you with us today. So I'm Shan from the Kiwi Landing Pad, and many of you have probably been on one of these before. So today, super excited to have Kirsty Traill with us, who's the VP of Customer at Hootsuite. Hootsuite is a, social planning tool, which I will let you explain more of because you'll have the good explanation. And today we're just focusing on, what is the customer journey, really drilling into personas, customer journey mapping, how you can speak to your customers, what you actually need to focus on, and a whole bunch of good stuff. So a few things. There's a poll running at the moment, so if you can answer those questions so we can tailor the webinar to who's here. And then if you have any specific questions, pop them in the question box below, and we'll get to those once we've done with Kirsty's presentation. So I guess I'm just going to hand over to you so you can tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get into it.
Excellent. Nice to meet everyone virtually. Happy Wednesday here in the US. I guess happy Thursday, happy International Women's Day. So my name is Kirsty Traill. Thanks, Shan, for the wonderful introduction. And I am the VP of Customer at Hootsuite, which I often get people saying, what is the VP of Customer? What does that entail? And it's a relatively new role. The focus is ultimately on customer personas, customer journey mapping, voice of customer. And then I also own the global customer support team of 70 folks worldwide. And I can talk a little bit about that once we get started in the presentation and what that entails. And so today I'm really going to talk about digital transformation and what that is really driving in terms of a customer experience, and then provide some tips and some thoughts around how to really align your business to your customers at every stage of their customer journey. So without that, I'm going to dive right in. And then I have timed the presentation. I think it should take around 30-ish minutes or so, depending on how quickly we talk, I suppose, and how many questions we have at the end. But I do want to allow some time for Q&A at the end. So Shan, I'm going to rely on Shan to collect that information and feed that back to me at the end of the presentation. As Shan mentioned, if you haven't had a chance, please do take the poll. I think last that we had looked, there was about 25% folks in the kind of early stage and seed, around 7% of companies are in Series A, and around 40% of companies tuning in today are in the Series B. So a little bit further.
A few more votes now. We have 42 people live, which is cool. So we have like 30% early stage, 16% seed, 16% Series A, and 30% Series B, and 4% Series C, which is really...
Oh, great. So really good cross-section. And then it sounds as though most people are in more of a B2B, so businesses selling to other businesses, with a few in the B2C, and then some companies that are in the hybrid. So Hootsuite is actually a hybrid as well. So we sell to enterprise customers as well as having a consumer offer and actually a freemium offer. So I'm happy to answer any questions at the end if you have any questions around target marketing differences in approach between B2B and B2C. And then it sounds as though quite a lot of companies tuning in today are in the technology space, with a few in construction and some in an industry that's not listed there. And pretty happy to see that there's a pretty equal split of males and females. So it would be remiss of me to talk about customers and focusing on customers without an understanding of who I'm talking to today. So thanks for taking the time to fill out the poll, and I'm happy to answer your questions, and I'll tailor some of my recommendations as we go through. But as I said, feel free to just ask your questions, and I'll rely on Shan to interrupt me to answer those, or hold those until the end.
Awesome. Cool.
So we're really, sounds like you want to say something.
No, I'm just saying, cool. We're gonna, I'm gonna flick to your presentation screen now.
Okay, so we're in an era of unimagined disruption, which is really being brought about by three key intersecting technology trends. The first of which is social. Social is one of the most pervasive mediums of our time. 90% of young adults aged 18 to 29 are on social, and 71% of online adults are on Facebook, with over 1 billion people logging into Facebook every day. We live in a hyper-connected, always on sharing culture, and it's changing the way we do business. The ease and accessibility has changed consumers' expectations of immediacy. More and more people want and use apps to control everything in their lives, from ordering a meal to getting a ride to the airport, to having a customer service issue resolved. And mobile is the defining trend of our age. Not only do 80% of internet users own a smartphone, 87% of millennials say that it never leaves their side. An entire generation is maturing in the age of digital. From global brands to governments, consumers are expecting a different kind of response. Human, transparent, co-creative. The power has moved to the collective, and it's being driven by digital natives. By 2011, everybody entering the workforce has always lived in a world with internet. And by 2026, everybody entering the workforce will have always lived in a world of Facebook. Tomorrow's leaders are in a process of digital transformation whereby they are aligning their business to this new customer paradigm. Digital transformation is the alignment of your business to your customers at every touch point in their journey, on mobile, in real time, and especially on social. And this change is happening at a massive scale. Who remembers these? I haven't seen one of these for a really long time. No other advent in technology has brought about such a massive change. Certainly telephone and email sped things up, but now with a free Twitter account, you can reach millions of people in minutes, starting a global movement. In the past, it would have taken months or years to get that kind of momentum, and now the power is effectively sitting in everybody's back pocket. And it's changing consumers' expectations. In the past, consumers would have heard about your company or your brand through a billboard. Today, they'll search for you on a mobile device. In the past, when evaluating different options, consumers would have most likely taken to something as archaic now as the yellow pages. Today, it's a matter of a few clicks on Google. In the past, they would have visited a retail store. Today, they can buy in an instant through their phones or an app. In the past, if consumers had an issue, they would have been buried in IVRs and phone trees. Today, they can take to Facebook and Twitter and reach an audience of millions in a matter of minutes. And in the past, if somebody really liked your brand, that kind of advocacy would have been talked about around the water cooler. Certainly very effective, but no way as impactful as the nature and the virality of social media today. CEOs, CMOs, and even new roles such as Chief Digital Officers or Chief Experience Officers are refocusing and reorganizing their teams to modernize, optimize, and integrate touch points across the customer journey. And having this focus on the customer really allows companies to break down the silos and the divisions between teams and organize all of the employees in an organization to focus on the customer to make that journey as seamless as possible. Here's a really kind of interesting example. This example comes from the founder and CEO of Hootsuite, Ryan Holmes. Over the holidays, he first became aware of this Roomba because he managed to catch a cat in a shark costume chasing a duck while riding a Roomba. It's more of a tongue twister than it sounds. Watching, someone sent him the clip on YouTube. So he watched this funny clip. Suddenly he became aware of this device called a Roomba and started thinking about, does he need a Roomba? So in his evaluation stage, he takes to social media asking if anyone has a Roomba, looking for feedback. Then as he moves into acquisition, he buys a Roomba. Unfortunately, his Roomba has a mind of its own and eats a little bit of his Christmas tree during the holiday season. He obviously posts about it, being in a social media company, posts about it on Twitter. And thankfully for Ryan, iRobot, the manufacturer of the Roomba, actually sees his post and reaches out to him directly. They saw his Roomba rocking a little too hard around the Christmas tree, and they want the opportunity to make things merry and bright again. And so here they've actually sent an upgrade to his home. And so he and Barbie, his dog, are pretty happy campers. They've got a new Roomba, they've repaired their Christmas tree, and they've taken to social media to tell everybody about it. So a little bit about Hootsuite and what we do and who we are. We ultimately partner with our customers on their journey to digital transformation across all of those touch points along the journey. We have over 800 of the Fortune 1000 companies using our platform. We have over 2,500 enterprise customers. Actually, and I need to update these slides because we have over 15 million customers worldwide in 175 countries. We are responsible for sending on behalf of our customers over 28 million messages a week on social media to over 3 billion fans and followers. So nobody else in our space actually has that size and that scale and is able to rival our reach. We offer unparalleled customer satisfaction, and I know this because I'm responsible for the team that has to deliver it. So for our enterprise customers, we have a 97% customer satisfaction service level agreement. We offer 24/7 global support in English, and we have a standard 1-hour response time on enterprise customer inquiries. And what's really interesting about all of this is we often see, because we have such a broad reach of customers and we are sending so many messages on behalf of our customers, that we see up to 13 different departments touching the customer across their business and across their organization. And Sian and I were having a little bit of a chat before this, and she was saying, oh, there seems to be kind of this intersection between customer success and community and customer support, and there's a lot, and marketing's touching the customer and sales is touching the customer, and there's all these different departments who are touching the customer in one way or another. But the interesting thing is that customers don't see all of those different departments. They really only see one brand. And so having a unified customer strategy is absolutely imperative, because ultimately what you want to make sure is that your customer experience is seamless, regardless of whether a customer is talking to somebody in the customer success team, customer support. Depending on what they see on the website, it's really important to make sure that you have a customer strategy and that you're really focusing on the customer. So in terms of the customer support organization at Hootsuite, I wanted to just share a couple of our guiding principles. So the vision that we have is through positivity, empowerment, and ownership, we connect with our customers to build awesome experiences. And then because we are a social media company, we like to put a hashtag on a lot of things. And the hashtag that we have is WeWow. And as we were coming up with both our vision and our mission statements, we kept trying to put the words "we wow" into the statement somewhere, and we just couldn't manage to fit them in the context of the words that we wanted to include. And so we broke them out and we just made them into a hashtag, which is WeWow. And that's become a pretty pervasive catch cry or a hashtag across our entire organization in terms of the standard to which we hold ourselves in our interactions with customers. We don't want customers to just have a good experience with Hootsuite. We want to leave them having an awesome experience, like an exceptional experience with Hootsuite. And so the mandate of all of the customer facing teams at Hootsuite is that we really want to make sure we wow our customers. And then in the customer support team, we are passionate advocates for our customers and each other. By listening and learning, we create one-of-a-kind experiences while having fun along the way. And then again, we have a hashtag. This time it's Think Like Sherlock. So in terms of Think Like Sherlock, we really encourage the advocates to think about what is the customer going to ask that is beyond the context of the immediate question that you see in front of you. So really encouraging our team to go above and beyond in terms of thinking about the downstream customer issue that the customer is wanting solved, and rather than having to have a lot of backwards and forwards, ultimately providing as much information to the customer in as personalized context as possible to solve their issue without having to have multiple interactions, which, as we know, leads to frustration and kind of lowers customer satisfaction. Ooh, a little bit of a slow build on the slides there. So as I mentioned before, we offer 24/7 coverage in English. We also have support in 6 other languages and operate 5 shifts. So for a little, and 4 soon to be 5 locations across 7 channels. And we currently take around 25,000 support interactions, or we're currently supporting around 25,000 interactions with our customers every month. That number's probably gone up slightly over the last couple of months. In terms of the shifts, I operate teams in Vancouver. So I have a standard day team in Vancouver that works the North American market. Excuse me. I also have a team in Vancouver that works a 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. shift, who covers a lot of my Asia Pacific market. I have a team in the Philippines who also helps with Asia Pacific coverage and does a lot of that highly repetitive work, such as billing inquiries, password resets. They also work a 24/7 shift and help to cover weekends. I have a team in London, which is really focused on enterprise support, working with the sales team to ensure that we provide that really red carpet treatment for our best enterprise customers. And then I also have a team in Bucharest who manages a lot of my multilingual European support for the EMEA market. And we just had approval, but I think in this month / early next month, we're opening a new office in Mexico City and bringing on a team in Mexico City to provide additional coverage, particularly in the early morning of the North American market. So to really cover that East Coast coverage there as well. And I'm happy to talk support and scaling support. I previously worked for a company called Snapfish. We had 100 million customers and I had a similar footprint globally. So if anyone wants to ask any support questions, I can talk to that as well.
Kirsty, just a quick question. So people sort of asked a little bit about why Vancouver, and was that cost related, culture related, or just started there and that's how it went?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Hootsuite is actually a Vancouver-based company. So part of it is that's where our offices have been. The advantage is that obviously now there is a currency advantage. The Canadian dollar sits at about between 25, depending on the day, and 30% less than the US dollar. And so when I actually took on the role about 2.5 years ago, one of my mandates was actually to review all of the support locations globally. And at that time, I looked into Washington State, Portland, Oregon, and a couple of other locations across the US, as well as other destinations in Canada, and went out and actually benchmarked what I thought we would be able to provide, the caliber of talent that we would get, and looked at the savings. And for now, we have a pretty solid advantage in terms of the currency and the talent that we're able to recruit in Vancouver. So, I mean, nothing's ever set in stone forever, but I feel pretty confident about the fact that we can continue to hire a very high caliber of talent, very customer focused. And given the current political environment and everything that's happening in the US, I actually feel very strongly that this is the right strategy for us at this point in time. By a similar token, I also undertook a similar exercise in Europe. So when I first joined, we only had customer support based in London, which, as I'm sure everyone can imagine, has the opposite disadvantage that I have in Canada. And so as a part of that, I opened up the Bucharest office and hired a multilingual team across a couple of different shifts. They sort of slide slightly differently. I don't have an evening shift there, but there is kind of split shifts depending on the coverage, because that also has the advantage that there's about a 2-hour time difference between London and Bucharest. And so I do get some timing advantages. And then obviously there's a pretty significant cost advantage in the Bucharest market as well.
Just a quick question on Vancouver as well. I noticed that Xero is moving to Denver, and they've sort of said, hey, we want to be an employer of choice. Obviously, there's less bigger companies there. Is that what you're finding in Vancouver, because the startup scene there is quite new still?
Yes, although we are starting to see some of the bigger players such as Google, Facebook, they are opening up Vancouver-based offices, and they are starting to recruit talent there. So thankfully, the majority of my team is considered a breeding ground internally for other roles, because they have such deep product knowledge and really understand how customers are using Hootsuite. They often are targeted. We have a 12-month kind of minimum tenure, and then they're able to move around within the organisation. But most of the team moves into roles such as launch specialists, customer success associates. We have a role that's called kind of a social media coach. So that sort of helps small businesses get up and running and help them configure their accounts. And some folks go into kind of the sales development rep type of role. So for the most part, I'm able to promote my team, or they're able to find opportunities internally. I have lost a couple to Slack and Google and Facebook recently, because Slack's always had a presence in Vancouver. They're also a Vancouver company, but also starting to see a few departures for Google and Facebook as well. Awesome.
I'll let you get back to your presentation.
So I just wanted to put a couple of slides up around sort of the customer experience. There's some data here from Forrester. 92% of customers view customer experience as one of their top priorities, and a further 60% see why offering a positive customer experience is important to getting ahead of their competitors. And I find that customer experience is kind of one of those catch-all phrases where people talk about and understand what it means at the broad context. But when you actually start to peel back the onion and talk about, well, how do I actually impact my customer experience and what are the steps that I need to do? Most companies don't really understand what needs to happen. And it shows up because, again, according to the Forrester customer experience industry, only 11%, whilst everyone recognizes that customer experience is really important and it's a key differentiating factor, very, very few companies are actually able to deliver an exceptional customer experience, which is really what customers are looking for when they want that kind of wow factor and that experience, which is just so seamless, everything works flawlessly. And it's costing companies a lot of money as well. Almost 70% of consumers online will move to another channel when online customer service fails. Like, most customers actually want to be able to self-serve and help themselves and find information online, and get really frustrated. I mean, it doesn't always have to end in a conversation with a live person or a warm body. If you're able to really build out solid self-service and frequently ask questions and have a knowledge base that is kind of targeted and based on what you know your customers are asking you, helping customers to help themselves is one of the best things that you can actually do for your customer experience. I mean, it's so much better to be able to figure that out online, read something and fix it yourself really quickly, than having to go online and start an online chat or pick up the phone to talk to somebody. More than 50% of consumers will abandon a transaction if they can't find or answer the question they need online. And certainly in North America, for online retailers in particular, these kind of channel switching and channel escalations are costing around $22 million every year of unnecessary service costs. So think about the scenario where a customer has tweeted you or asked you a message, asked you a question over Facebook. They don't get the response they want in a timely manner. The next thing, they've started an online chat. In the meantime, they've probably sent you an email as well. And so when customers don't get that experience or don't get that response in the timely manner that they're expecting it, they'll often jump around channels until they get the answer that they need. So it's really important to make sure that you do have and that you understand where your customers are trying to contact you, and you optimize for those channels first. So obviously Hootsuite is a social first company, because we are in the social media space, and so we have pretty fast social media response times. But if you're in an industry that might be more traditional manufacturing and customers are actually picking up the phone, then make sure you have people answering the phone so that you can get what your customers need in the channel that they want and which they want to engage with you. I really love this quote. It actually comes from the Amazon leadership principles, and they have a principle called customer obsession. And I certainly hold Amazon up as one of the industry leaders in really nailing the customer experience across all of the different touch points. And I can talk on and on. I've got a horror story which I'll share with everybody after this, and I can kind of contrast it with my experience with Amazon, and it really shows, right? Their customer obsession really shows. And so this principle says that leaders start with the customer and work backwards. They work vigorously to earn and keep customer trust. Although leaders pay attention to competitors, they obsess over customers. And it's really this obsession around customers that I think certainly I'm very passionate about, but I think the really leading companies it's very easy to pay lip service to being customer focused or saying that you're customer centric. but it's actually quite hard to then pull the thread through across all of the different touch points online and offline with your sales team, with your sales enablement material, with your marketing collateral, at your trade shows, at your events, to really make sure that that experience is really consistent and that you're picking up that feedback. You know, are your field teams enabled to actually give that feedback back to, you know, improve processes, improve the product, you know, make sure that there's some kind of closed loop mechanism so that customers understand that you are listening and learning and iterating on what they're, all this really rich information that they're providing to you. So with that, I'll sort of switch gears a little bit and talk about the how. So how to make your customer journey really seamless. And the first part of it really starts with defining who your customer is. And I was talking with Sian earlier, we both spend quite a bit of time with New Zealand-based startups and some Australian-based startups. And I would say probably the biggest thing, if you take nothing else away from this presentation, the biggest thing to take away from the presentation is how important customer personas are, particularly if you want to move into a market that's bigger than just Australasia or New Zealand and Australia. And the reason for that is, look, I come from New Zealand, it's 4.5 million people, and I understand that we do have different demographics and psychographics in terms of different customer personas within the New Zealand market. The counter argument I will say is when you actually start wanting to target, I used to live in Japan before I moved to the US. There's 120 million people in Japan. There's 330 million people in North America. There's 30 million people in Canada. The fastest way for you to burn through your marketing money and to like really shorten your roadmap, your runway, is to not have a clear understanding of who your customer is and who you're targeting. And there's lots of different ways that you can do this. Most people, especially it sounds, you know, are in that sort of series B, a few earlier in the stages, ultimately really dig in and understand and look at your existing customer base. Who are you selling to? What do those customers look like? What do they have in common? You know, are they all in the same industry? Is there a vertical market? You know, at obviously the company level, and then take it a step further and look at, you know, who are the actual people? Who is your buyer? Who is signing the check? Who is actually, you know, writing, like signing the purchase order? Is there an influencer involved? You know, often you'll find that there's a person that does a lot of groundwork that actually does all of the research and pulls together a proposal. Are you targeting that person? How are they influencing your person that signs the check? And so the process that we've been through is basically looking into all of our Salesforce data, looking at and interviewing a lot of our salespeople, and then we've actually pulled out and defined who these people are, and then gone out and conducted interviews. And I know that probably sounds like a luxury when you're in the series, in the early stages of the company, but certainly I can't really reiterate enough how important this step is. Getting inside who that buyer's head is, how do they think, you know, what's their background? I've put an example here. You know, do they have a family? What's their education level? You know, what are their demographics? You know, where do they live? What makes them tick? You know, are they male, female? What's their age? How much do they earn? And then things like, you know, where do they hang out online is a really important question. Who are their opinion leaders? Who are their influencers? What type of events do they go to? Do they belong to any type of online communities? What about offline? You know, where do they hang out? There might be really easy ways to target these people, these personas at a pretty low cost manner, without having to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on like an advertisement during the Super Bowl, what have you, you know, at the other end of the scale. And so it really helps you to really target your go-to-market and really tailor the way that you speak to these customers as well. And I'll talk about that a little bit in a moment also. Super important to understand what their goals are. What are they looking for when they come to your company? What is the primary pain point they're trying to solve? How do you help them solve it? You know, and often there are verbalized or stated goals, and then sometimes there are, you know, often there's an internal goal. Most people want to feel like they're valued at work, or, you know, want their boss to praise them or do a good job. So it's important to think through what's the risk factor if they get it wrong? How are you providing messaging around mitigating the risk? How are you helping them to understand that you're the least risky of all the scenarios, or that you're the solid choice in your particular category or industry, to make sure that they feel really comfortable with choosing your product or service? And then what are their challenges, right? So how do you help them to mitigate the challenges that they have? So this is kind of the first level. Often companies will define, I've given a HubSpot example here as well. Often companies will define sort of more than one persona. I will definitely caution about, so here in the HubSpot example, we have 3 different personas. At Hootsuite, we have 4 personas total. 3 personas are kind of active personas, 2 are core or focused, and then 1 is an aspirational persona that we're actually building towards wanting to be able to target more effectively in 2018. Having 10 personas is too many. And again, especially when it comes to a bigger market, it's really important to understand you can have 10 personas that you want to target over the next 10 years, but really understanding and going after 1 or 2 really core personas enables your sales team to quickly identify or opt out of any deal that doesn't look or smell like what one of your core personas should be, and also helps them to identify very quickly by asking the right questions, is this someone that has a high propensity to buy based on this list of questions that we've targeted based on what we know about the personas. So again, I know it sounds sort of fluffy marketing and everyone understands the importance of it. What I find when I talk to companies, as I said, particularly in the early stages, is not a lot of companies are really actually pulling the thread through and doing the work in terms of actually defining these personas and really targeting and tailoring. And there's multiple reasons to get this right. One is that it really impacts how you talk to your customers and the verbiage that you use, not just on your website and in your go-to-market material, but it also helps to tailor and target your sales enablement material and set your sales teams up for success. So if you have a team of 25-year-old guys and they're selling to enterprise Erin, well, maybe she's going to identify with them as like, someone that's like a nephew, or how are they talking to enterprise Erin? How are they tailoring their language? How are they making sure that they're speaking in the language that a director of marketing operations or a VP of marketing or a VP of product marketing is kind of listening for? So it's really about making sure that you tailor and target all of your marketing messaging across all of those different touch points and all of your different channels to make sure that you're speaking their language, particularly as it pertains to their needs and their challenges in your industry and in your space that your product helps them to solve. That's the first point. The second point is it also helps you to get really, really hyper-focused on how you deliver that content. So do you necessarily need 1,000 flyers? And I'm giving an old school example by way of actually showing an example, but do you need printed collateral? Do you need to be at a trade show? Where are your key personas spending their time and how are they finding their information? Often what we find when we undertake the persona work is that word of mouth is very, very strong. How are you using that to tailor and target your influencer strategy? How are you using your existing customers and encouraging them to become advocates for your brand and encouraging them to share their experiences through case studies and customer success stories? And how are you encouraging them and facilitating existing customers to talk to new prospective customers to really help to drive that beautiful virtuous funnel, which we love, which is brand awareness through that really positive word of mouth and sentiment. So that's really important as well. I'm going to pause here and see if we have any questions before I dive into the journey mapping process. And I'll just quickly do a little time check, make sure I'm not too far over time.
We have quite a few questions. I guess I'll just ask the ones that are related to this. So there was actually one around earlier when you were talking about customer satisfaction and response rates. I guess someone said she's talking about customer satisfaction and response rates for enterprise customers. What do you do for non-enterprise customers? Are they forgotten about, or is there a separate strategy for them?
There is a separate strategy for them, and And again, you know, if you're in the earlier stage, I would recommend that you don't start differentiating until you get to scale. I would recommend, if you are those 25% of people that are sort of seed Series A, is you probably want an email channel, and you probably want to have a 6-hour response time, and you probably want someone managing that that's also managing kind of 5 other things. Maybe it goes through to the product team in those very early stages. So I'll sort of caveat that for the folks in the earlier stages. People that are in the later stages, once you start getting a larger scale, it is, in my opinion, really important to differentiate your customer support, because again, it really helps you to save some of those dollars and funnel them back into, you know, your product team, your product and development and innovation, or your sales and marketing efforts. And so we've segmented our customers. We effectively have 3 core target markets. Enterprise, which I spoke about earlier, and then we have our free customers. So Hootsuite actually has a free downloadable app. You can sign up on the website for free just to kind of get started. You can add, I think it's up to 3 social networks, and you can be managing very simple social media needs in terms of listening and monitoring and responding with a free version of our product. And I trained as a yoga instructor a couple of years ago. I use a free version of Hootsuite to be managing all of my Yoga Kiwi Global social media, and it's amazing. Like it's I mean, obviously I'm biased, I work there, but it's phenomenal. I have health and wellness posts scheduled, you know, out 6 months in advance. In the middle, we have kind of what our SMB offering is, and that's a paid offering, and that goes from everything from, I think it starts at $15.99, you know, all the way up through to, you know, ultimately our enterprise. And again, it's configurable and scalable based on how many social networks you want to add, how many team members you want to add, and kind of how you want to manage your social media across your organization, and what kind of use cases ultimately you're using. So the free and the pro customers, we have sort of bucketed together, and we call them our self-serve. And we really drive them as much as possible to our help center, our frequently asked questions, and our community forum. So that's another really good low-cost way, is having your advocates help answer some of those questions, having some kind of community where people can come and ask questions and have those answered. We also, so if I sort of break it down, the SLAs, to answer the question specifically on customer satisfaction for our self-serve, is 92% customer sat. So anyone that contacts customer support in the free and pro version, we have a standard of 92%, which the team actually consistently hits and beats, which is phenomenal. I mean, that's world-class customer support. They still have access to that 24/7 support in English and access in those 6 other languages. And then in terms of the standard response time, our stated service level agreement is 12 hours for the free customers and 6 hours for our paid customers. Now, in reality, anyone that's a free customer can reach us over social media. And we have on average about a 4-hour response time on Facebook and a 30-minute response time on Twitter. And anyone that is a paid customer can reach us through live chat, and we have a less than 90-second response time on live chat. That said, if customers come in via email, we do try and optimize the way in which they're routed. So if something is, you know, a billing inquiry or a password reset, ultimately we'll try and send it through to our team in the Philippines for resolution, so that our teams that are in the more expensive head offices can focus more of their time on enterprise. But I do still have a billing team and a technical team in both Bucharest and Vancouver, and soon to be Mexico City, also looking at those inquiries as well, because particularly in a software as a service business, it's really, really important. Like if you sort of mess up customer support and customers churn, then obviously you lose all of that downstream revenue as well. So it's, you know, obviously nobody wants to lose a customer in a transaction, but it's it's also kind of imperative in a software as a service business or any kind of subscription business that you're really having those customers for life, because obviously you don't want to lose the downstream subscription revenue. What I will say is that, and as I said before, I used to work for a company called Snapfish, which was a B2C, basically a photo merchandising company that sold photo books and photo cards, and you can print snapshots and what have you. and that was a low average order value, high transaction volume business. And we also had a similar model because, you know, if your average order value is $10, you need to have customers having a great experience, because you want them to come back and transition from buying holiday, you know, Christmas cards to making a wedding photo book or baby's first birthday or what have you. You know, it's really important that you have customers continuing to repeat. So whilst we do differentiate, it is super important that you do resource for the business. I think personally what I've seen and experienced is that we're starting to transition from, you know, customer support used to be this sort of poor cousin. I used to say nobody ever graduated university saying, oh, I really want to work in customer support. Certainly I didn't. And now people are actually starting to realize that it's not this place where, you know, customers go to die and you know, and all the mess gets kind of swept into the customer support team. They're actually one of the most important teams in an organization. And because of this, you know, if you don't get customer support right and you don't have customers coming back, you really don't want to be dealing with a really high customer churn scenario. You know, and the examples I'll give you, you know, Comcast is a perfect scenario, and FedEx, like they're just so bad at customer support and that customer experience that people hate them. I mean, everybody's cutting the cord these days because it's so hard to get out of your Comcast contract, and it's so hard to get a hold of their customer support team because they've really optimized for cost at the expense of customer experience.
I'm going to swap to some, we've got like 12 questions,
okay.
Which is a lot. So I guess on that note of what you were just talking about, so how do you deal with stakeholders in the buying decision that can see their role being affected negatively, and I guess putting up a barrier?
Well, that's where I think you go back to your, depending on what your sales methodology process is. So certainly when I, many moons ago, used to work in sales, you know, you can employ a variety of different tactics in terms of like the outflank strategy, making sure that you understand who their influences are, and then working on a strategy around who are the people that inform their decision, and how do you start to work on and get close to those people? How do you understand what their objections are and understand what they see as being negative, as the negative impact, and then helping to give them information that understands what the positive impacts are and how your solution will solve like this multitude of pain points. You know, I don't know the specific use case or scenario, but you know, I certainly would devise a sales strategy around those specific people. I mean, you could potentially have a webinar strategy, you could have a content strategy, you know, they start just seeing things. You could employ a retargeting strategy where they just start seeing things across the internet that pop up that talk about what the advantages are of your specific product, which are very targeted to mitigate what their concerns are or what they believe are the key risks or the negative impact. But understanding, and as a part of the persona work, really digging into that. And actually that's where I would go and say, interview those customers, like go and find some of those people, like maybe even talk to customers that you've signed and say, hey, we would, you know, we've had a couple of customers say this, like, what would be your approach to that? How do you think about that? And weave that information into your kind of go-to-market and marketing and sales enablement strategies. And what I've found certainly is, I mean, one thing, just a word to the wise, I mean, don't ever call, it's best to avoid calling this, we're doing market research or we're doing customer research, because people just immediately think you're trying to sell them something. Generally, my advice is to frame the ask for it, to talk to them as we're reaching out to valued executives, we're reaching out to get your opinion, it's going to help shape our product roadmap, we really want to understand how you use our product. And you can weave in the questions around want, thinking, feeling, needs, perception, as you're asking around the use cases as well. But your ultimate goal is to really connect with these people and spend the time truly understanding what makes them tick, because that's kind of where the gold is. And certainly it's really, in my opinion, it's certainly worth the investment of time, but don't be afraid to tap into people within your existing database, or people that look like people that are within your existing database. You know, depending on what your relationship is, you could even potentially reach out to this person and say, hey, we're putting some new sales enablement material together and we'd love to understand what your objections are. And what we've found is as you engage these people love being asked for their opinion. And so it actually often engenders a lot of that brand advocacy, and people then feel quite a strong bond because they feel like they've been included in the process and they feel like they've got an investment in your success because they've given their advice, and you know, as long as they can see that you've taken it in some way and that it's valued, it doesn't necessarily have to be acted on, as long as they feel as though it's being heard and understood, that they'll often turn into really loyal advocates for your company or your brand.
Do you have much success with like pieces? Sometimes our follow-up's not that great, but if you have used feedback, do you go back to people and you're like, hey, we used your feedback in this way, and then you do build this like strong, loyal community?
We do, yep. And I have a few slides on that, actually, which I can kind of skip forward to, but we absolutely do. So we measure our net promoter score. We have a little pop-up in our dashboard, and there's defined parameters on exactly when we ask it, which is based on the work that we've done in our customer journey mapping to know like exactly when you're getting to critical points in your journey. And we'll pop up our little NPS survey. It's the standard NPS question, which is how likely are you to refer or recommend Hootsuite, 0 to 10. We ask for a comment underneath. Anyone that leaves a comment gets an automated email response. We've worked really hard with our product and our product marketing team to make sure that we're able to then send out what our public facing top 3 items that we're currently working on our roadmap are. So obviously I know it's, you know, sometimes a little sensitive if you're in stealth mode, obviously pretty hard to do that. But you know, often you'll have 1 or 2 things which are kind of industry standard or things that you don't mind sharing with your customers. Absolutely, we just have an automated response that goes out. And when we first tested this, so before we rolled it out at a broader scale, we tested it on a cohort of customers, and we saw a 30-point increase in their NPS scores. So huge impact. And so now we're rolling it out in an automated fashion. If you don't feel comfortable putting your public facing roadmap, even just a couple of bullet points, very high level, I mean, at a very minimum, just responding and saying, thanks very much for your feedback. You know, customer feedback is really important to us. Here's how we use it. Even that has a positive impact on customers' perception of your brand. So, yeah.
What is your NPS headline score, if you don't mind me asking?
We do not disclose that publicly. But it is in line with industry benchmarks. So Thomas Tongs has a great article. If people are familiar with Thomas Tongs, he's amazing. If you're not familiar with him, you should definitely subscribe to his newsletter. He's a VC guru on everything startups. So he's written a really interesting post, and I can forward it to Sean afterwards to distribute on NPS. And he's included in his NPS article a link to the Zendesk NPS benchmarks. So generally the industry standard benchmarks are 25 for B2B and 40 for B2C.
Right, awesome. I'm going to let you flick back to your presentation and fire through
that.
Keep going, and then we'll try get through some of these questions. We might run like 5 minutes over time.
That's good. So then just quickly on the customer journey mapping process, and this looks a little bit like an eye chart, but I'll blast through it kind of quickly. So the first thing is really, you know, understanding and getting to know your personas. And even if you just do this and you don't map your customer journey, this alone will be able to like really understand like what's their thinking. I mean, it sounded, for me, it kind of sounded a little woo-woo when we were like, how do you feel during this part of the process? And you actually get some really interesting insight as long as you have the braveness, I guess, to ask or the confidence to ask the question. But that's a lot of what helps to inform the type of verbiage and language that you should be using. So if someone's feeling frustrated, plain, simple, easy to understand language. If someone is feeling annoyed because they don't have enough time, then how do you use that to inform, like maybe you can send them a text message or put a pop-up in the dashboard or send them something that's a little snippet of information where they don't have to spend 20 minutes listening to a webinar to get the information they need. So a lot of that information is actually kind of, as I said before, is like super valuable in helping to target and really tailor how you get one level deeper and get customers what they need, but also talk to them in the language that they really want to be communicated in. So then you kind of look at, I mean, this is sort of all the like attitudes and emotions, backstage support. So a lot of this, you know, who is the persona? What are they thinking, feeling, doing? And then ultimately mapping that across the customer journey. So you need to define your customer journey stages. Usually, you know, if you, and again, I think I have a sample journey map here, so we'll go through that by way of an example, but basically understanding what are the different stages that your customers go through, everything through kind of figuring out and understanding that they have a need, all the way through to post-purchase, onboarding, feeling successful, and then ultimately you want to get them into that advocacy stage, because that's what fuels that virtuous circle of positive word of mouth, which helps really optimize your marketing spend. So then like mapping across mapping what their customer journey is across the different stages. We created a list of questions that we asked at each stage of the journey. So how did you find out about us? You know, so on and so forth. Like, what was the buying experience like? Did you sign up online? Did you look at a webinar? And on and on and on. So, you know, tailor your interview questions based on what you know, and obviously you can fine tune your interview questions as you go through the process. My advice in terms of getting a robust sample size is, if you can, 10 people per persona. It will give you'll find that after 3 or 4 people that you talk to within that same persona, the light bulbs start to go off, because they really start saying the same things. But in order to be more statistically valid, I would say a minimum of at least 7, ideally 10 people in each persona. And then obviously once you've got all of that qualitative data through the personas, go back into your data warehouse and look at backing that up and validating it with all of the different touch points across the journey and having all of that information. So, you know, if someone says they don't look at the website, go back and look at how many people are clicking, what are the page flows like, you know, so on and so forth. You know, if everybody says they sign up on the website, but the sign up process is awful, then have a look at people that land on your registration page and what's your conversion rate, and just validate that information is, you know, actually ties back to what customers are saying. Then once you've actually mapped out the customer journey, you can start looking at where are the areas for opportunity. So obviously it's impossible to do everything at once. My advice here again is focus on the key areas of the journey that you need that are the most critical. So maybe it's the step between evaluation and acquisition, right? Like getting customers to buy. Maybe there's something in your sales funnel that's broken and you need to get customers from that awareness phase into some kind of lead generation form into your sales process. Maybe you need help once customers have signed up, making sure that they're onboarding and they feel successful. Don't try and do everything at once. Focus on that most critical part for your business and then really dive deep and optimize those. So then kind of basically brainstorm what are the areas that you need to kind of optimize. Get a group of cross-functional people together. If it's something in the sales process, talk to the people that are on the front lines in sales. Talk to other people in your industry, kind of gather best practices and build out, you know, ideas and how you ultimately think you can solve these issues. And then like anything, like any good kind of plan or record or roadmap, ultimately analyze the impact, the effort that you need to invest versus the impact, and then just build out. We basically build everything out in Google Sheets with a timeline. So, you know, at this point, we're going to map our mobile journey, and then we're going to optimize these touch points, and it all just becomes this giant big roadmap of customer experience and improvements, and we just work off of that. And then and I'll talk a little bit about metrics, but it's really important to baseline your metrics, because then you can actually see and measure the impact that you're having on those core metrics. Here's an example. This is one that I just pulled off the internet. Thanks Google. So this guy is a frequent business traveler. I think it's a flight-based you know, journey. So, you know, his journey stages are researching the travel, researching the company, booking the flight, getting organized to travel, getting on board, and then being in flight. I personally would add a post-flight experience, because I think, you know, the airport experience is a part of that. Obviously, it's outside of the control of the airline, but I think there are things they could do to impact that. So look at what your journey stages are. Look at the actions that the customer takes in each stage of the journey, both, you know, and look at where they're having a negative experience or a positive experience, look at what they're thinking. You know, I hope I can find a convenient flight at a great price. Wow, there's some great customer reviews. The boarding agent knew it was my first flight and welcomed me personally. How are they feeling? You know, excited, confident, unsure, hopeful, and patient. And then, I mean, we haven't necessarily mapped it like this, but we do have a journey map that kind of maps what the experience is and where the customer feels frustrated and where they feel really happy. And then just, again, as I said, look at where your opportunities are across the journey. Don't try and do everything at once. It's the first way to burn out. Make sure you just prioritize what's most important for your business at that point in time. You can't have a renewal business without having really strong adoption and onboarding. You can't have a strong adoption and onboarding business without making sure people are getting through the acquisition stage. So just depending on which stage you're at in your company evolution, just focus your efforts accordingly. So obviously don't forget social, I have to say that. So the last thing I want to talk about here is metrics. I put this quote in from Peter Drucker. Hopefully everyone knows Peter Drucker. He's an American management consultant. If you can't measure it, you can't improve it. And that's absolutely true from a customer experience standpoint. So what we have at Hootsuite is that we have a customer dashboard. This dashboard is measured on a monthly basis. A lot of these metrics are actually measured on a weekly and some of them a daily basis. This is presented to our senior executive team, so our CEO and all of our C-level executives once a month. And anything that is off of what we set as a designated target, there's a very strong conversation around why is it off the target and what is being done to rectify it. I won't go through everything. Hopefully your renewal rate, net renewal rate, everyone should be familiar with churn, NPS, net promoter score, customer satisfaction. Activation rate, again, it depends on what type of business you're in. If you're in like a SaaS business, it's important to make sure your customers are activating, or touching various defined actions within your dashboard or within your product within a defined period of time. Usually it's within the first 7 days. If you're more of a B2C or more of a transactional business, order completion rate, conversion, those types of metrics would be more important than an activation rate metric. WOW is weekly active users. So again, this could be in a more transactional business, like number of customers, number of orders. Number of customers, probably number of new customers versus number of returning customers would be really important one to measure. And then lifetime value over customer acquisition cost. So this is really a measure of your marketing spend efficiency. And it's really important because if you're targeting the wrong customers, your LTV over CAC will be completely out of whack. So the benchmark for this metric is around 3. You do not want to have an LTV, a lifetime value over customer acquisition cost of less than 3, because what it means is that you're spending, is that right? Yeah. You don't want to have a number that's, let me just think about this. The higher the number, the more you're spending, the lower the number, the less effectively you're utilizing your marketing dollars. And what that generally means is that you're going after too broad of a section of customers in terms of your advertising and go-to-market mix. And you're not seeing the resulting lifetime value back from the customers. And so the way to optimize that number is to really come down and focus on who are your target customers, what are the personas, where do they hang out, how can you really drill in deep and find those people where they are, because that's where you'll optimize your customer acquisition costs in terms of what it's costing you to bring customers in the door. And you'll see it back in the lifetime value because you're bringing in the right customers that know exactly what the value proposition of your product is, and you're basically like shooting fish in a barrel. One thing I'll say here too is obviously a snapshot is great, but what's more important here, and I haven't shown you because obviously then I would be exposing all of our data trend lines, but is to measure this trended over time. So I actually have this dashboard which shows for each of these metrics the 12 monthly trend or at least the quarter by week, depending on however it is you want to slice and dice it. But make sure you trend it as well so that you can see any big dips or peaks in the data, and usually that's where you really need to focus in.
On this note, questions been asked around hiring, and so earlier, the earlier the better is the best answer. But realistically, should companies be thinking about their first customer? When should they be thinking about their first customer success hire? And is it ballpark in terms of MAU or revenue, or is there another link like churn or metrics that sort of instigates the need?
Yeah, so it's usually around MAU or revenue. What I think you see in the earlier stage companies is that you're most likely having probably your account executives or your SDRs doing these kind of hybrid roles. I would say that, again, it is sort of dependent on what your business is and what your average contract value is. But I would say, I mean, ultimately, once you get past that sort of $2 to $5 million of revenue, it sounds like, I think we had a lot of companies in that sort of Series B. Once you sort of get beyond that sort of $5 million mark, I mean, it really depends. Like if you're selling really big average contract value, so say you're selling like 250K deals, well, you know, to hit $1 million, that's 4 deals. You probably don't need a customer success executive for 4 deals, but it depends, because if they're highly, highly complicated deals, then and the opportunity to kind of land and expand is really big, then maybe you do, you know. And so it does depend a little bit on the nature of your business. The one thing I would say is there's a couple of things you can do in the early stages. In the early stages, obviously your account executives, I mean, ideally you don't want your account executives doing customer success, but I would say in those anyone that's in the seed stage, I don't think you really probably have a choice. I mean, certainly people can do both. But once you get to kind of, I mean, what you ultimately want to do as much as possible is have your account executives freed up to just be nailing deals and really getting those customers across the line. And then you want to hand them over. And my recommendation, once you get to that stage, is then you can actually have a person that is a hybrid customer success and customer support kind of person. So they're more of that farmer nurturer kind of person versus your AEs who are just those like really hunter driven, you know, love numbers, love kind of chasing the sales quota target type of personality. And the other advantage, I mean, ultimately as you grow, you want to separate out support and success, but in those early days, having the success and the support in the same place really allows the customer success person to actually be feeding information back to product. And ultimately what you want your customer success person to do is to be feeding, and again, it depends whether you want them to be quota carrying. I mean, ideally what that person does is, if you have multiple use cases of your product, you land what the core use case is, your customer success person goes in, understands what the customer needs, sets up quarterly business reviews or 6 monthly business reviews. You understand what the customer wanted, the value they want to see from your product. And once every 6 months, once every quarter, you start by just having a telephone conversation. Maybe it's an hour, maybe it's with the right stakeholders, just saying like, this is what you asked us to deliver. Here's what we've delivered. Here's what we're doing. You know, where do you see this going? What are your needs in the future? I mean, your customer success person is the person that really needs to be reaching out and building all of those relationships around whoever that key buyer or key champion in the account is. Because what you don't want to happen is suddenly, you know, somebody comes into the organization, your champion's gone, or, you know, people, especially in big markets like the US, people move around all the time. So having, you know, one buyer as your key contact is actually quite a risky strategy. So you want your customer success person to be basically expanding the network and ferreting out all of the different use cases within the organization and bringing those back, so that you can start kind of working on, all right, well, the next 6 months we're deploying and we're getting them up to success, and we're having the first quarterly business review, but then we want to lead into, you know, what are the other use cases? What are their long-term goals in this area or space or segment? And how do we start helping them to be that, you know, really positioning yourselves as that trusted advisor, because that's where you start to expand the accounts and start having your success folks really starting to carry quota and add value. The other thing, and just going back, so I know there are folks in the seed and Series A stage, The other thing that often is quite common, which I'm a huge fan of in those very early days, is actually having your product team take those really early kind of customer issues, because it helps to drive a really strong customer focus. And the product folks, they sometimes don't get out there in the wild in front of customers, and it's really important that they hear kind of directly from the people using the product, like, we tried doing this and we can't, and it's really impossible, and or like, this is our use case and we're struggling with this, because it'll help really frame a customer focus with your product team moving forward, even if you then end up separating it out later and either pulling it into a customer success role or building it directly out into your customer support team.
That's a really good answer. This topic is so robust. Conscious of time, so do you want to maybe finish up this presentation, and then what I might do is follow up with you on all of these questions that have been asked, like after this or later this week, and then we can sort of write a bit of a synopsis on all of them and then send it out to everyone who's here.
Sure. So as you've obviously got all of your metrics in terms of your quantifiable data and your dashboard, making sure that it's trended over time. Don't forget the qualitative data as well. It's super important. In fact, often what you'll find is the richness of this data really helps to complement what you're finding in the quantitative data, and it'll be that next layer of insight that you need to be able to drive the metrics and on the quant side. So look at, what are your NPS? What are your detractors telling you in NPS? What are people that win deals telling you? What are people, when you lose a deal, what are your customers telling you? Why are people renewing or not renewing? You should, if you don't, you should also always have some kind of exit or churn survey. So if you're SaaS-based business, as soon as someone hits that downgrade button, you need to be sending out a survey. Your success people or your AEs need to absolutely figure out and find out why you're losing deals or why someone's not renewing. And on the transactional side, what makes someone a repeat customer versus a one-time customer, like figuring out that insight and really starting to use to the richness of that data to help drive a lot of your customer-focused innovation as well. So with that, what I'm going to do is, I think this is my last slide. Yeah, I'm going to just bounce out here, and I want to, if it works, just play this little clip for everybody. Can everyone see my screen? Sean? So hopefully I still have everybody. Maybe.
Oh, sorry, I was on mute. That's why no one can hear me. I was too engrossed in the video, so we had no sound, but I sent everyone the link, but you could sort of get the message.
Great. Yeah. So basically the kind of the message there is, you know, don't be afraid, like listen to what your customers have to say. If lots of your customers are telling you that your UI sucks, probably a good idea to take a look at your UI. But don't be afraid to have fun with it. I mean, we've, you know, we took some pretty harsh customer feedback and turned it into, you know, kind of a marketing vehicle, and just had a little bit of fun with it. So we, you know, this is how we go back to our customers and we let them know that we're listening to them, and that we're taking their advice on board. So that's kind of what I had today. Hopefully people found it useful.
Awesome, super good. Your video is off as well. So I think that was really awesome. I think what we'll do, because I'm conscious of everyone's time, is that I'll get all of these questions answered, and then we usually write a blog after this. So I will write those, and I'll also send them through in some meaningful way. And so Kirsty, thanks so much for coming online today and sharing everything that you have to share. I think we could probably do another session or like another hour. There's just so much stuff to cover. So thanks so much. And then I guess for you guys, Kiwi Landing Pad has just sort of announced or launched. I've been spending this week building out our content and event calendar for the year. So we're sort of a webinar every week for the next 50 weeks or so, which is a little bit intense. And so I would keep an eye on those. It's on our website, kiwilandingpad.com/events. And we're doing monthly AMAs, topics for sales, marketing, product management, and then our Kiwi Founder Series. And our sales and marketing jams will be back the week of May 8th, which is Tech Week. So that's really exciting. So thanks so much for tuning in, and have a good day.